his conclusion was, over the years, marketing has promoted trade, and when countries trade with each other, they don't fight with each other. So it's an honorable discipline. And in any case, my daughter-in-law or would-be daughter-in-law is my son's liability. Why should I bother? So that is one kind of certification. The second person that I am reminded of from marketing discipline is, see, my basic belief is that in marketing, this problem came when the differentiation became a key. And companies found it difficult to substantiate their claims. And linked with that, we had certain, I will say, misnomers that we used to say that difference between publicity and advertising is what you were referring to earlier, that publicity has credibility because it comes from independent sources. So when you were talking about TRP scams, fortunately, this is known. Only thing is somebody provided evidence and somebody is investigating. And advertising is paid for. So when you pay for, you have a license to say what you like to say. But independent agencies hopefully are credible, and that's the reason publicity has a better credibility. Both these were creating problems. So Ogilvy, in my opinion, was one of the most ethical persons amongst practitioners, most creative. And he advocated a beautiful thing to his contemporaries and to his clients, which was known as image era in marketing. He says, why do you talk about competition? So I now bring in Professor Krishna Kumar and his discipline strategy. I blame people like Porter, apart from others, over focus on competition in business also created this business of lies, or lies in business to begin with, right? So Ogilvy's basic claim was, you talk about yourself, you tell people that you are positively good, and you tell them that if you like me, continue with me. You don't need not talk about, you are better than competition, because it's difficult to substantiate. So, and we have this grand old saying, and I will not name the brand because at this age, if I get sued, nobody will protect me. See, 4 out of 5 dentists recommend a particular so-called toothpaste brand. These are well-known things that we have talked about. But most tragic for me, as a marketing teacher, has been 2 companies we glorified in our early days of marketing teaching and management teaching: Nestle and Johnson & Johnson. These companies' reputation was built on being one of the most ethical. And Tylenol case is well known. Anywhere ethics was taught for a long time. The classes used to begin with Tylenol. Unfortunately, Nestle sullied its reputation way back in 70s. Courtesy that famous, or now infamous, WHO, so code on so-called milk powder. Johnson & Johnson took some time more recently, so I'm not repeating that. The kind of faulty implants and all that, that sullied the. So business of business is business has been an old, most quoted kind of a statement. But I thought business doesn't give us a license to cheat. And that's the concluding part of this first part I'm saying. Ogilvy made a beautiful statement that we have a license to exaggerate, because if we did not believe in exaggeration, this whole world could have been a nudist colony. So our grooming, our hair, dressing up, putting all kinds of things on our body, different kinds of glasses. I mean, this shows that we like a little bit of exaggeration. But he also cautioned, he made 2 beautiful statements. He said, we have a license to exaggerate, or we have a right to exaggerate to make a point, because communication is about a little bit of exaggeration to make the other party listen to you. But You don't have a license to cheat. And one of the Ogilvy's commandments out of the 10 commandments was, customer is your wife. You don't tell a lie to your wife, so you have no business telling a lie to your customer. So people should not take it literally, and to make it general neutral, we can use the term spouse. But I thought he had made a fundamentally wrong assumption. Most of us tell lies to our spouse also, right? But as a businessman, he was ethical and he tried to propagate that. So lastly, I'm coming to, or second last, a framework I developed when you provoked me to think on this, and not that first time I was thinking. Uh, I have told my students or old students that I have no control over you once you pass out. Even during your stay in the institute, I only have control over my courses. But when I become a ghost, if I find you doing unethical things, I will be coming down very heavily on you. So many of them would have prayed for my long life. Okay. I classify this, and this is again at this age. I am not giving footage. I mean the sources, but if I remember correctly, Daniel Yankelovich organization, Yankelovich Incorporated, used to conduct a survey. So part of the learning is from there with what I am sharing, and part of it is my working on it, because I have worked on values for some time during my professional career. So I say in terms of business lies, not lies, lies of business. I classify it into this following categories. There are innocent lies, harmless lies, lies which can harm someone, lies which can harm someone and benefit me, lies which can substantially harm someone and benefit me. So six different categories of lies in this sense, and me is basically the business I'm talking about here. I am not getting into examples. People here will get that. So I classify this on two-dimensional axis. One is the intent, when some business or somebody tells a lie or on behalf of a business. So intent could be selfish or selfless. And there are several examples of this nature. The second dimension is consequences, not damaging, severe damage. So depending on when you have also advocated that we should look at remedies. That will be the last part. I will quickly, I mean, this is how I look at it. So basically I'm saying we need to classify this lies of business on this. There is one way I am looking at is intent and consequences. And that is one part. Business of lies is a different kind of a game. And just before you concluded your speech, I was checking on Google Uncle. 15th March happens to be the so-called World Consumer Protection Day. And I remember twice I got called in while I was with IIM Lucknow for this local IIPA Association in Institute of Public Administration, some retired IAS officers. They used to invite some leaders. So at one time, Narendra Tiwari came. They will have some bureaucrats and they will have some academicians. And both the years, my talk was, I find political manifestos as the most deceptive communication. So third year onwards, I was never invited. So I have classified 5 top categories, which in my opinion fall in the business of lies. So I put number 1 as politics. Number 2, I have put as religion. And it doesn't hurt anybody. All this is across religions I'm talking about. Number 3, I have put in my list legal profession. Number 4, which was traditionally put as number 1 in terms of untrustworthy kind of a source, is the oldest profession in the world. I am not naming it. And we Marketing initially got classified as second oldest profession. I put marketing, finance, and business together in this category. So top five with, and media I am putting next to us because we are the fellows who are using media. Media I use more as a source. Uh, Business today is controlling whether it is politics or whether it is marketing or finance or media. So to that extent, and business is also in politics. And if I have to classify it, again, I put it on a two-dimensional axis. It's basically based on, sorry, three-dimensional axis in business of so-called lies. Choice. So as a stakeholder, do I have a choice not to get victimized, not to say, like, say, I use this example of, say, believing in godmen. And there are good godmen, there could be bad godmen. I'm not getting into that, but majority seems to be frauds or crooks. So I have a choice. I need not submit myself to this. Similarly, certain kinds of business products or services, as a customer, if I'm knowledgeable and I have a choice, I need not get victimized by them. So first categorization is, do I have a choice and the degree of choice that I have. The second category is in terms of retrievability. Having got into their trap, can I extricate myself? So suppose I consume some Bhikaji Bhuji or something, I can discontinue. But if I take a wrong drug, which has long-term severe impact, it has a problem. If I get addicted to something, it has a problem. So this is how I look at it, retrievability, that is it retrievable, not retrievable, to what extent? And the third, obviously, is the consequences, that how severe are the consequences of this business of lies. And in my understanding, playing with the mind of innocent masses, which businesses, media, and politics, it's a very, very heady cocktail, does all the time. So very quickly, and this is more of a quick thinking kind of a thing. How do we see the remedy? So one kind of cycle that I see here, and which gives us certain framework, I call it character, credibility, legitimacy framework. I have also maintained, and this is not new, I have been sharing this, and I'm more in the speaking mode rather than writing mode. For last at least 15 years, my diagnosis has been that two C's are creating problem for us in this country. One is crisis of character, and one is crisis of citizenship. So again, I will not elaborate for this kind of a group. So basic issue is we have to begin with character, which hopefully gives us a credibility, and that credibility leads to legitimacy. So from business angle, this is one framework that I am using. But caution I am suggesting is one should not be a spoil sport, because I said there are harmless lies, right? So some little bit of exaggeration when to communicate, somebody says that, look, tiger was 20 feet long. I mean, it doesn't hurt anybody, right? My biscuit is tastier, right? You can taste, and if you don't like it, you can throw it away. So that I call as so-called harmless kind of a thing. But if I am putting addictive, and I believe there are, I will not name brands, but people here are known for that. There are certain brands of sweetened carbonated beverages which sell more near schools. And I understand from industry sources that some of these are addictive. Now that to me is a crime. And where I say that, look, it begins sometimes with harmless. One of the most ethical person that as a student of marketing and business I have admired in this country has been Mr. Prakash Tandon, late Prakash Tandon of Levers, who established certain standards in Levers. But when you look back, he was also a person responsible for introducing Dalda as a marketing person and convincing of all the persons, a person like Sant Binova, that it is not harmful. No, he would have done it with all innocence at that time. He marketed dalda as poor man's ghee, right? But later on, dalda. I'm saying that there is a degree that one has to have. And lastly, I'm saying in shaping values or shaping characters, I'm reminded of Skinner's book, Beyond Freedom and Dignity. Some of the current prescriptions of the current government seems to be moving towards that. I am not an advocate. My advocacy towards education and shaping character is it should give me a basic definition that I have appreciated is sa vidya ya vimuktaye. True education liberates the mind. Are we doing that? No, I mean, I personally feel no, we have failed in that, but yes, effort has to be made. The second kind of remedial framework came from Atalji. He made a beautiful statement during the last years of his prime ministership. He says, corruption seems to have become a high reward, low risk business. So business of lies, I equate with corruption. And I had said at that time, and I retain or maintain that in this diagnosis, the correction is also inbuilt. That means if we can reverse the thing, what is high reward if it becomes a low reward and high risk business? Hopefully there is a remedy, right? But the problem that I see is we have to be perpetually optimist. People who talked about Chal, Charitra and Chehra, they seem to be also having problem with all three. We educators also have our share of falsehood and propagating false. Part of it based on our so-called ignorance, part of it based on our laziness, and part of it based on our ideology because we believe in something and we think that this is what is to be propagated. So if we are able to develop questioning mind and we can develop a kind of notion of eternal vigil. So I still maintain that it is still caveat emptor. We have not reached a stage where people used to say that no, it is caveat vendita. We need to be realistic because I've concluded with a marketing example. I propagated a lie that, customer orientation. But later on, I corrected myself. I said, no, business also exists for its own interest. Business has suppliers, business has employees. So a stakeholder interest is what we try to protect in business. Customer also is one of the stakeholders, but we commit all the sins in the name of the customer. So one has to be realistic. And lastly, I'm saying that it cannot be a regulatory framework which will take care of it, because one problem I have seen in this country is when we do not want to act, we enact. So we have to be careful that yes, some people have to have with it from academia and business, and there are good people all over, there are bad people all over. So those who are good, and this is my last point, the problem I have seen in my lifetime is also part of your problem. Bad people come together very easily because they have certain common interests. Those of us who claim that we are trying to serve a larger interest, or we have some thoughts which can help shape certain values, certain things. We have terrain issues, we have ego issues. It's very difficult to put together so-called good people. If we are able to do that, and I am hopeful we should be able to do that, I see a hope. Thank you.
Introduce yourself. Introduce yourself. Mithlesh, yeah. Introduce yourself.
Okay. First, one sentence introduction is I consider myself a student of marketing in particular and management in general, and I hope to retain that posture lifelong. rest of the things you had already said. I'm a product of Pantnagar. I'm a product of IIM Ahmedabad. Both my post-graduation and fellowship I have done from there. And I have served in XLRI, or I should say I had my job, because I'm also reminded of two people whom I had opportunity to interact with, Dr. Kurian and Dr. Rusi Modi. In my presence in two different seminars, they stopped their number two and said, when they claim that I worked with TISCO and one person said I worked with NDDB, he says, no, only I can say whether you worked or not. You can say that I had a job with this organization. So I had a job with XLRI, Institute of Rural Management, Anand. I am Lucknow in 2 phases, and I am Bangalore, where I finally retired. I served I am Bangalore for about 20 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Geetika. Dr. Geetika.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. First of all, I would thank Professor Krishna Kumar for this opportunity. I'm amongst marketing experts, an entrepreneur, and the Bhishma Pitame of strategic management in India. I teach at MNIT Allahabad in the management department. I also teach strategic management and entrepreneurship, basically, and I have supervised all 18 PhD scholars. And presently, I'm working as Dean Research and also Dean International Affairs at MNIT. And another responsibility which I have is I'm heading the IPR cell of the institute. So we have to, I am given the responsibility of taking care of at least academic ethics at the institute level. So that is very briefly about me. As Professor Krishna Kumar introduced, it happened one morning in January, I believe, when he referred to Amit ji loves Bikaji, and a discussion continued. And then he said that what about a workshop or a discussion on business of lies, and it immediately appealed, because this is something which anyone who can think a little bit or is understanding things would definitely see through the lines which are being spoken, presented. We are also being, I wouldn't say victim is a big word, but we have also faced and been part of some of these lies in some or the other manner. So very briefly, I would be presenting, sir, as I had said, I have made a few slides. So I would be sharing my screen. I would request you to allow me to do that.
We are doing that. We are doing that.
Now you are host.
Now you are host.
Yeah, thank you. I hope my slides are visible.
Yes. Yes, yes.
Okay, so I have just titled my brief talk on simply as business of lies. I would be concentrating only on business, as we know the famous or infamous quote, which has also been referred by my previous speaker, Professor Jha, that business of business is business, but we all believe it is no one's business to be in the business of lies. So with that, I would start, and I was looking at the topic which Professor Krishna Kumar had given to all of us. He had put lies of business / business of lies, and it appeared to me that basically it is a continuum, not a welcome continuum, not a very good continuum, but it is a continuum. Because in my off time, I'm a very big fan of Premchand, and I was reading some of his stories, and I found that more than 100 years ago also, they were talking about adulteration, they were talking about cheating in management, cheating in businesses, low quality of products, Although my generation believes that in older times it was all good. So there were lies of business. People were talking wrongly about the quality of the product, about the product or service itself, about the measurement. In those days, it was a SAIR and a GUZ. So in a GUZ, they will not measure the full GUZ length, or they will not measure the full SAIR weight, but still they were lies of business. They were cheating. And we all know that there was this system of double accounting, that all business persons were keeping two books of accounts, one for the authorities for taxation and other things, and one for themselves. And as also it goes on as a saying that as in a proprietorship firm, the business may go into losses, but the owner may still flourish. And why about proprietorship? Also in the company form, we have so many cases with us who have cheated in connivance or themselves, and still they are flourishing. All others associated with their business are suffering. So there was lies of business, but sooner this lies of business converted into business of lies. So you were cheating in terms of quality, you were cheating in terms of measurement, you were cheating in authorities in terms of your real income. But when it started, that we started cheating in terms of what we are selling. This is Sapno Ka Saudagar. We are creating an environment using extensively celebrities from all fields. Professor Krishna Kumar used this word, Sadi ka Mahanayak agar aisa karta hai to kya hoga? Yes, if we call someone, if we give someone such big status of being Sadi ka Mahanayak, so definitely we need to look at it with some more seriousness. I have tried to identify three major issues which need to be taken care of. One is that every producer of products or services is exaggerating on all that they can about everything. आपने कपड़े सफेद चमक रहे हैं, so your mind is also brightened because your dress is bright, washed with a particular soap. You are wearing a particular wristwatch, so it takes you to a different level. You are wearing particular shoes, that is taking to a different level. What you are wearing, what you are using, which car, which watch, which clothes, which soap, which cream, which shampoo. You have split end hair, you have different shampoo for dandruff, different shampoo for split end, different shampoo for oily hair, and so on and so forth. Exaggeration at every level. That was also somewhat acceptable. But understating negatives, not talking about what can be the harms, trying to hide it. You may exaggerate positives, but if you don't understate what may harm, what may be the challenges, what are the risks, as they say, mutual fund sahi hai, and then they quickly, in such fast speed, they say mutual funds are liable to market risk. By the time you hear, the ad has changed. If you look at the document, it is so complicated, so many points, such fine print, it is almost impossible. So you have to depend upon your agents. And the worst, which I think is, I would be talking about this, elusive messages. Messages which unless and until you are actually very smart, you may get driven off. So these messages which directly, indirectly affect us, our children, our family, the society at large, the peer pressures, all that has to be taken care of. And I see that this continuum largely was reinforced by the twin forces of globalization and information technology revolution. Before globalization and IT revolution, so much of accessibility was unimaginable, and competition was also limited. So we were still living in the world of lies of business, but globalization and IT pushed us to the business of lies. I will not be talking about other areas. I will be only concentrating on the world of business per se. I have identified they are not necessarily these four. There may be many. Just for the sake of giving my idea about how I perceived as the causes, probable causes maybe. The most important, that is why I refer to IT and globalization, competition enhanced multifold. From local markets, from physical markets, market area, to national market, to international market, to global market, to digital market. So competition enhanced. And not merely that, resources will always be limited. Resources can never be unlimited. So there is always a tug of war to how to utilize the resources, and in this process, we end up sub-optimizing the resources. And then, yes, Professor Jha said many things about consumer, but yes, in economics, I'm a student of economics. So in economics, we say consumer is the sovereign. So we have to please the sovereign. And how do we please the sovereign? We say what the sovereign wants to hear. What the sovereign, what the king doesn't want to hear, we don't want to tell that. So we want to present, we want to package, we want to position the way our king or queen wants to see it. So the pressures of competition, the pressure of resources, the pressure to please consumer has pushed us into a marketplace where it is only zero-sum game. My win is your loss, and your win is my loss. Therefore, whatever may happen, since it is a warfare, and since someone said that everything is fair in war and love, so I will do whatever I can do to win this war. Even if it means cheating, even if it means lying, even if it means exaggerating, even if it means influencing, even if it means putting big people into saying things which they will otherwise not want to say or do, but offering them the amount of money which converts them into saying what they should otherwise not be saying. I would here like to refer to one more set of ads by, again, Mr. Amitabh Bachchan. In one ad, he talks about buy jewelry from this particular jeweler because of the purity of gold. In the other ad, he says, put your gold safely to take loan. So is jewelry, again, what Professor Krishna Kumar said, should those who have a weak liver be eating bikaji bhujia, or similarly should those who have to, because you would be taking loan someday, so you should have to have jewelry. So first invest in jewelry and not invest in other areas. So these are some of the things which we need to look at. Now, how did this business of lies flourish? There are 4 P's, 5 P's, 7 P's. I'm not going into those. I have taken only 3. Promotion, position, and product. Product has taken a sideline. No one is talking about the product. People are only promoting whatever they are promoting, whatever they can promote. For example, we flashed the torch from our mobile phones, and this smartphone I always look at it, and I always see, if you look at the advertisements, nobody talks about its telephony. Everything else is talked about. So nobody is talking about product. People are talking about how can it be positioned for your internet, for your music, for your camera, and so on. And it can be promoted to any level, by any means, for any purpose. And this gives rise to a series of lies which are not necessarily apparent lies, but they are quoted. They are beautifully packaged to appeal to masses, gullible customer who thinks that she is a sovereign. I'm using a couple of examples, primarily because I have also been, as I said, I victimized, but I would say that all of us have faced this in some point of time. Let's look at automobile, car. Why do we buy a car? What is the utility? In economics, we talk about value. We talk about value addition. We say production is adding utility. So, and consumption is availing this utility. But does any car manufacturer talk about its basic utility? They would talk about mileage, they would talk about speed, they would talk about car, that is space, and then to top it all, there is a brand ambassador. And the most critical thing that I found is about insurance nowadays, that insurance is not being sold for insurance. Insurance has become an investment instrument. And no one is talking about the terms and conditions. The return is being exaggerated by indirectly adding the tax benefits to the returns to a client who may not be so wise to look at financial matters and would depend blindly on the insurance agent. And then there is again a brand ambassador. And the worst of it all, my own profession, teaching, education. Look at educational institutions, and the worst cases of so-called coaching institutions or online education. Are they talking about education? Are they talking about the purpose of knowledge? Are they talking about knowledge, learning, behavioral changes? We are talking only about rankings. We are talking about placements. Even in my institute, the first question, ranking, is already available on the website. So if they want to ask, they don't ask how many faculty, what type of courses, what type of teaching facilities. They talk about placement. And in placement, which company, what package. And then we have brand ambassadors even for that. Just a few instances. The list would be long and the whole session will go into that, so I am skipping. And then the consequences. Consequences may again be many. I have taken 3. First of all, the bandwagon effect. Uski kameez meri kameez se safed kaise. Onida was the first to start this. Owner's pride, neighbor's envy, and so on. And people keep on. I also saw an ad which was very, very disturbing, that a wife is telling her husband that, look at the neighbor, he is junior to you and he has all the facilities. What do you do? Why don't you earn? This is for some product which is of lower price, but starting like this, it converts into impulsive buying. Then resources are diverted, sub-optimization of resources. Advertisement and promotion is necessary to connect the producer with the buyer. But if you look at the magnitude of advertisement industry, which is why I say it creates artificial growth which is not self-sustainable, because something happens, even the minutest disturbance happens somewhere in the world, our economy crashes. I'm not talking about the world economy. So just some data, I was just looking at advertisement industry. Total turnover of Indian ad industry as per Statista was 700 billion rupees in 2020, which is digital ads were 199 billion, and it is estimated to be 223 billion rupees in 2021. India is the third largest ad market in the world in terms of ad spend. So much only on advertisements. And who is paying? The buyer is paying. So actually the real price of the product is including the cost of advertisement or promotion and endorsements, and therefore there is a wide gap in the value, intrinsic value, and the price being paid, which is why I call it as an artificial growth, and in economics we call it as a necessary evil. Just before I conclude, I find that it is basically a problem of trade-off between economic objectives and social obligations. Every time we talk about ethics, we are reminded of business of businesses, business by Milton Friedman. So actually, yes, business of business is business. No questions on that. Shareholders' value has to increase. Production has to increase. If production will increase, employment will increase. Income will increase, demand will increase, and a virtuous circle of growth will take place. But what about social obligations? What about externalities? What about things which affect directly or indirectly the society? The sub-optimization of resources. And to top it all, now CSR is being so much emphasized, but we can see through communication messages that even CSR is being used as a marketing strategy. So finally, to quote our Honorable President, former President Dr. Kalam, he had once said on corruption, the government could frame laws, it would only end up in filling jails. And we all know how much faith he had on youth, and that is why he was teaching at various institutions, including IIMS. So he said, young people have got a responsibility to make a home clean and transparent home. And how can we do this? We need to denounce unethical practices by emphasizing on value education. Needless to say, things will not change overnight. This is a flourishing industry. What gives success is adopted by everyone, unmindful of the long-term effect on the progeny, on the society, on the future, even of future of business. But what is important is what we are doing today. Keep reminding ourselves to generate awareness among people, especially to be aware of subliminal messages. What is transparent, what is obvious is okay. But what indirectly quoted, covered, given by huge personalities, yes, if I do not want to follow Swachh Bharat, I will blame Bikaji's Bhujia ad. So we need to be very careful about these messages which indirectly affect our subconscious. And we must take a small step towards our goal of ethical world. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Now, Vishwanath, we'll keep question answer at the end.
Yeah, okay, sir.
Could you stop the
I also need the screen share.
pass back the control to us. Make us host.
Can I now? No.
Yes, yes, yes.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Now it is.
Now is it? No.
Data Geetika, make us host once again.
Sir, should I make you host once again?
Yes, then we can make host others.
Okay. Done, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Lada.
अच्छा मेरा तो वही सिचुएशन है.
एक मिनट.
हाँ.
किशन लाडा. नहीं लाडा. अच्छा ठीक है. हाँ. Okay. Now you are host.
Ooh. Okay.
Krishna, while you are the host, just change the share screen to multiple sharing so that you don't have to worry about this.
How do I do that now?
Go to the bottom where it says share screen.
Yeah.
Click on the right side of the share screen.
Oh yeah, got it. Make it multiple.
Yeah.
Done.
There is a panel in the bottom, sir.
Yes, done. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, it is visible now.
Very good. I want to thank Professor Krishna Kumar for organizing this session. But from our point, more important that he raised the topic. So Subhashish and I discussed the topic, and I should say we realized we are not experts at lying. And so then we decided, okay, why not explore this subject? And so we agreed. And so this research, I might say, is made possible by KK doing and prompting us, okay, this is a topic we can explore. So this, what we present here is except that it's a work in progress. We are still building our expertise in line, and hopefully, but we are surprised, at least I should say, I am surprised, the extent of work done by mankind with respect to lying in its history. Some of it we are going to present to you today. So I am Krishna K. Ladha. I work for Indian School of Public Policy and India Development Foundation. I am a graduate from various places, including IIM Calcutta and Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Worked for many years abroad and then in India. My areas of interest include economics, politics, history, constitutions, and so forth. I'll let Subhashish describe himself. You have some of it is written on this first transparency. I will begin by noting it's 12:10 p.m. We have 3 speakers to go yet. And let's see if we can do. I might cut out some of the things I have on the PPT here so that we make some progress. It's a big topic. Let me start by the agenda that we have today. First one is
Krishna, put it to the slideshow mode.
What's that? Okay.
Slideshow.
Very nice. So, agenda. A sense of when lying matters in light of game theory. So this is the part I'll deal with. And lying by the top management, corporate or political, That's the part for Subhashish. It's a hot topic, lies. It become more so with the social media and even more so for countries with the low ranking on corruption perception index. I do want to point out the difference between lying and abuse of dominance. They are different things. You can have abuse of dominance even without lying, even in broad daylight. So our topic is really related to lying. Difficult to ban lying in all its forms because that may ban opinions and place us on a slippery slope where the government decides what to ban. Liberty is essential for truth-telling, and that makes lying possible. Mankind has tried to deal with the causes and effect of lying. It has created incentives for truth-telling, and it has tried to limit the effect of lying. I'll try and highlight some of these actions taken in our history. But we do note that people are fed up of lying, misinformation, corruption, and the excesses of self-interest. Right? Sometimes I'm sticking to the PPT more so because that will manage the time better. Do lies matter? If yes, when? So that's an exploratory question. A lie requires two or more players, two or more individuals. A lie matters when it is believed and leads to an action based on that belief. A white lie, you look beautiful, probably does not matter. A lie that is ignoring that is ignored. A lie itself that is ignored is probably immaterial, such as a lie like James Bond movies lack action. A false tip to lie, let's say buy a stock, that really matters. So we are going to begin with an examination of the topic by doing some stuff that, by noting stuff that has already been done. So to look at this picture here or this slide, start at the bottom. So on the left extreme is Monopoly with one player, and that's not a game, and it's a perfect information. On the right extreme is perfect competition, which also includes perfect information as an assumption. The number of firms is infinity. It's also not a game, and that's where lie does not matter. There cannot be a lie in a world of perfect information. So the center part, which is where this is game theory applies, when there are few players, not one, not infinite, but somewhere in between 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's where it would matter. So within that, there are two types: games of complete informations, which are where players know off of others. And in the next slide, we have games of incomplete information. Now, usually in games of complete information, once again, there is a limited scope for lying, but let me tell you where lying would not happen. Lying is irrelevant when the opponent has a dominant strategy. Why lie in a prisoner's dilemma game? Lying is also not in self-interest in a signaling game with a separating equilibrium. And even when you have a pulling equilibrium, the opponents know that you are lying. A threat or a promise is not believed if it is not credible. But if it is credible, it is not a lie. We'll talk about credible commitment in a moment. Games of pure conflict, which really are the zero-sum games. No communication is possible in a zero-sum game. And so lying is irrelevant. Now, finally, the pure coordination games, there is really no motive to lie. A pure coordination game would be, we all agree that we shall drive on the left-hand side of the road, or for that matter, on the right-hand side of the road. So these are pure coordination games, and so the lying is not a factor here. So as you might expect, lying would be the factor when you go to games of incomplete information. This is when the players have private information. And the standard problems that you are familiar with are moral hazard, adverse selection, externalities, public goods. Lying is possible, but in these cases, the opponents know the incentive to lie. Similarly, in strategic voting, where I vote not for my top choice, probably because it's not going to win, but I vote for my second or third choice, that's strategic voting. That's a misrepresentation of one's preferences. But that's okay. Now, for these problems, there have been in game theory, you have heard about solutions that people have tried out. One well-known one is the mechanism design. Let me give an example. In a mechanism design, in a sealed bid second price auction, players reveal their private information. There is no incentive to lie. So what happens, this second price sealed bid auction is going to govern the self-interest in such a way that it precludes lying. The truth telling is the dominant strategy in a sealed bid second price auction. And those of you who had an opportunity to study constitutions would probably be familiar with that. The constitutions are actually written with a view to mechanism design, that the players who are going to play under the constitution are not going to be the honest types. They will do whatever is in their self-interest, including lying. So a well-designed constitution is really going to take that lying into account and then devise the rules or the constitutional what you call articles in such a way that lying is or its effect is reduced, right? So there is a whole topic for discussion actually. So also I want to give you the flavor of how much work has been done on lying and how we have guarded against lying over time. We are not the first people to deal with it. So let me just start by saying significance of lying. And there are a whole set of games that are here, but instead of me going over the games, I'll just conclude with the gist of what these games are saying. This game here, trust game, is basically saying if I ask you, please give me a loan of rupees 10 lakhs, I can anticipate you are probably going to say no. I say, I'll give you 20% interest and you probably still say no. And so that's what this game is saying. And let me just read this section. Lender knows the borrower would promise to repay. That would be a lie, but the borrower would not repay. It's a one-shot game. So the lender does not lend. And the consequence is the credit market disappears, and so goes the opportunity for mutual benefit and economic development. We can write a similar game, similar one-shot game in which potential insured, namely the buyer, does not buy insurance because the insurer would not honor the claim. So what I want to say is it's not only the small guy who may cheat, the big guy can also cheat. And in fact, that is going to be one of the points we are going to discuss. That is what will come under CEO lying. So both firms can be cheating, and so can the borrowers or small guys. Much of the, by the way, academic literature deals with the small guy cheating as in principal agent. The agent is cheating, but we never we do not really consider deeply the principal cheating. In fact, that is one of the topics of two-sided moral hazard. This highlights that point. Now, I want to give you one way out of the problem of lying, and that has been tried out in history. So let me bring you the game that involves lying and the role of credible commitment, and which can also be used in educational institutions as we teach our students. So the story is a merchant wants, this is Middle Ages, a merchant wants to sell goods in England. Now, the merchant is going to ask for king's permission to sell goods. The king will permit the merchant. The only problem is the moment the merchant enters England with his goodies, the king has an incentive. Those kings were hard up, actually. The king has an incentive to confiscate the goods of the merchant, and the merchant really has no go out of it. So this whole game is known. And so the merchant doesn't even enter England. And so now at the end of it, everyone is worse off. Merchant does not bring his merchandise in England, and the king does not get any goods or any of the little amount of tax that he could have honestly got. And so no trade takes place, and even the citizens are worse off. So what can the king do? The king knows that I will have the incentive. The moment the merchant enters England, I'm going to cheat. And the king knows that, merchant knows that. So the king can say, I promise, but the promise is not credible. So in fact, here I state that, not I meaning, I'm the one writing it, but it's known. Usually it's very hard for a dictator to make credible commitment since the dictator's word is law. It's like Pakistan's military telling we shall now follow democracy. So that's how far the credibility will go. But they found a way in Middle Ages. And the way, I'm not going to again describe the game. Instead, let me go to the conclusion. The king then dealt with the guild of the merchants guild. And he made a promise to the guild that I will not confiscate goods. And the guild agreed. And so they had an agreement. I'm sure there are many details they worked out. So if the king now confiscated goods of one merchant, all merchants would stop trading with England because the guild will communicate the word to the entire community. And so by working with the guild, the king made the commitment which turned out to be credible. So notice the title of this slide, Gaining More by Having Less. You have surrendered the power to confiscate and you are better off. So this can happen. This is a lesson that I wanted to highlight. What is the lesson? The king has the temptation to lie. Lying is harmful to the king. The king knows that. The merchants know that. As if the king is crying out loud, I don't want to lie, please help me. And so there enters this idea of credible commitment. And that's a way out, that the king constrains himself from lying. The tying oneself from lying is an important way. And if I might add there, one of the assignments I give to my students is to please prove, right? You provide all the good arguments that are out there, that doing ethical business is profit maximizing in the long run. And so the students, at least who have a go at it, probably will carry some message in mind that you really can have competitive advantage by telling the truth. And if you look around in the world today, there are many houses in India and abroad which are built on truth telling by and large. So if when I do a survey in class and I ask my students, name one house which is doing business based on ethics and truth telling, usually it's one company and you know the name of that company. If I tell them name a company which is doing hera-pheri, the hera-pheri means lying, there is usually one company and you know the name of the company, and I'll not name either of them. But I can say a lot of great companies that are out there, they're primarily built, there's so much profit to be made by simply truth telling. There are great companies out there which have done that. Now, I want to get to the real problem here, which is this. We want truth in a one-shot game. We don't want just truth from reputation. We don't want truth in a repeated game. These are some of the options of obtaining truth. I want truth. I'm going to meet a shopkeeper. I'm going to buy something from him, and he should do the right thing, and I should do the right thing. That's really what I'm after. So I want to quote Kenneth Arrow here. Trust and truth-telling are goods. They increase the efficiency of the system, but they are not commodities for which trade is possible. You cannot buy truth. For both economic efficiency and for distributive justice, Arrow says, something more than the market is called for. And on the right side, I have written various institutions that might help: our reputation, ideology, social norms, culture is a very big deal. I'll always remember this point because one of my ex-colleagues from, I am the ex actually, he's still there at IIMK. He constantly emphasized this point that we should have a culture of good governance for a good institution to do good stuff. Of course, there is religion, there is strict liability, there is regulation. And I would like to add, one way of doing is that organization, if you are looking at organizations, you have good individuals, great individuals indeed, at least 5 or 6 great individuals, and they can transform institutions. But right now we are in an India where great individuals are being pushed out. And well, that's the way it is. When is lying a problem? It is a problem when it changes the receiver's action. If many believe a false claim, it can lead to violence, hate crimes. It can change electoral outcomes. You remember the recent US election. Lying over social media is a serious problem, and these are the many of the things that my other speakers have spoken about: spurious drugs, false advertising, cheating the young, elderly, and so forth. And it's a problem when the CEOs lie. It's a problem when governmental officers lie. It's a problem when the top guns lie. Time is now. Oh my goodness. I have to pass it on to Subhashish. Subhashish, you please tell me. I'm going to move the slides for you if that is okay with you. Hello?
You're allowed for multiple screen sharing, so you don't need to. I can get it.
Okay,
out.
Then should I
But you have one more slide left to talk about, no?
Oh, you want to, or should I?
You finish it.
Okay. So here is, where I spoke about two-sided moral hazard. When both the principal and agent may renege on their promises. Now, this was a problem considered by James Madison in his Federalist Paper number 51. Let me quote. Is one of the most famous sentences here. In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place oblige it to control itself. This policy of supplying by opposite and rival interests, this is the partial solution to the problem. The defect of better motives might be traced through the whole system of human affairs, private as well as public. We see it particularly displayed in all the subordinate distributions of power, where the constant aim is to divide and arrange the several offices in such a manner as that each may be a check on the other. So this is the theme of checks and balances in government by co-equal branches of the government at the center. And of course, checks and balances through center versus state government. These are the explanation of this point. So what topic we are discussing in the panel today is, you see, my point was to highlight that this has seized us from ancient Athens times to the modern times, and we continue to struggle with it. And remember that democracy is a fragile system, and so there is a constant struggle for it. And what is said for democracy can also be said for the CEOs and top management of a company or an institution, and that's where Subhashish takes over. Subhashish, I get out?
Yes, you just stop sharing.
Okay, done.
So everyone can see my screen, right? So I have only 3 slides. So hopefully I'll be able to finish them fast. So I'm focusing on lying in business and government, and I want to make a distinction between how the lying takes place, because as Krishna has already gone through, to be able to control lying, because that's what we are trying to do, we have to first accept that everybody wants to lie. If we start thinking that people are good and don't want to lie, then we will never be able to stop lying. So because people are going to lie. So the first thing that we must sort of start with is that people will lie. The next question we ask ourselves is, why will they lie and how can they get away by lying? Right? So that is the approach that we will take. And it's important to distinguish between the ways that people can lie to be able to control it. So lying in business, essentially, we want to talk about controlling information flow. So I'm taking a very broad-based view on this, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And so in other words, it covers both hiding information as well as manipulating information, direct lying or half-truths or what have you. Lying in politics is again similar, controlling information flow and covers hiding and manipulation of information. So in that sense, it's similar. In business, the most significant culprit is the CEO. That's in much of our discussions today. We were talking about a single entity or a single person, legal entity, single person. But if you sit back and think, it's actually the CEO and the board together who can lie. But the CEO is the most significant culprit. In politics, our focus is on those who have power and use it. And so the coercion is a problem. CEO, remember, can induce people, but it really doesn't have that much authority compared to somebody in politics. So what is our presumption? Our presumption is that CEOs lie because it is in their best interest, something that Krishna has already referred to. And essentially, the purpose of lying is to be able to control actions of others based on this misinformation. So I want other people, Krishna started by saying, to make this a meaningful discussion, we need two individuals in relation or transacting with each other. And at the beginning, somebody said, I think it was Professor Jha who said that children lie all the time, right? But we're really not worried about those situations. As economists, we're looking at where the transaction is affected. So the basic purpose of lying by the CEO is to control other people's actions, whether people will buy your shares, whether suppliers will sell to you or not, etc. Now, as I said, when it comes to the government, it is the power which is the more important element to focus on. So if A has power over B, we are assuming that A exercises control over what B does, again, manipulates information, or can directly force people to do certain actions. The CEO has to manipulate the information to get others to act, whereas the government can go in directly and make people act that way. So in business, the CEO derives power over other stakeholders from her superior information. The nature of this information asymmetry is often outside the scope of the CEO. It depends on the organizational structure, the context in which the firm is operating, the degree of separation between ownership and management, the number of large shareholders in the company, all of which you know much better than I do. So, but you realize that the ability of the CEO to manipulate actions by others is crucially dependent on the context. And that is from where the CEO derives power. In politics, the government generates the asymmetry. So the asymmetry of information for the CEO is given by the organization, it's exogenous, whereas in the government or in politics, the government generates the asymmetry through its use of power to control the dissemination of information or what information is collected and or subsequently released, through government data collection, through control of curated media, what have you, right? So there are various ways that the government can control this. CEOs, as I said, can lie to various stakeholders. And the difference with the government is that every single citizen in the country is a stakeholder. So we cannot distinguish between who is being harmed and who is not being harmed, because remember, the government always uses public resources to do anything. So even if there is no direct harm, the fact that the government is using the taxpayers' money is always a cause for harm. And therefore, it is much more important to worry about government's lying. So now I come to controlling lies. And here, the way we are going to talk about it is going to the two types of governance that we have. One is governance as we usually understand, which is the government, and the other, of course, is corporate governance. And the reason why we talk similarly for both is because both have fiduciary responsibility. And what do I mean by that? Very simply, again, you know all of this. Fiduciary is a person or legal entity that has the power and responsibility of acting for another. So it is important that I'm acting for somebody. Now, remember, when we talked about the CEO, that's why it is important to know whom could the CEO fool and why, right? So many of the ad examples that have been given before, you're fooling the customer so that the customer can buy. When the CEO makes false disclosures, the CEO is trying to fool the shareholders so that they buy into the company. Also, they invest in the company. So it is important to understand what is the relationship between the objective or between the object for whom the lying is being committed. So CEO plus board, fiduciary responsibility towards shareholders. I put in within question mark stakeholders, because there is a lot of inconsistency in our thinking by trying to expand shareholders to stakeholders. And if there is time, we can discuss that. And the government fiduciary responsibility towards citizens, which I've already explained. So let us see. If we are focusing on business, right, I'll give some very quick examples. So first is CEO activism. My colleague and I have just written a paper which just looks into the following problem. Of late, it has been observed that CEOs in the US, they have gone out and supported causes which are democratic causes, not Republican causes. Now, the question we asked ourselves is, why are they doing that? Now, if I go back and look at these Republicans, unlike in India, there is much more data in the US. So you also get the individual donations, not the company's donations, the individual donations made by the CEOs. And over there, the CEOs are clearly Republican, because each CEO on the average, if the CEO gives $100 as donation, $68 goes to the Republican Party and $32 goes to the Democratic Party. So clearly, the leaning of the CEOs is towards shareholders. Is towards Republicans. So now the question is, why are they then supporting? What we argue is that they're doing it for strategic reasons. So we show that CEOs who operate in polarized societies are more likely to lie or stand up for democratic causes than CEOs who are not in polarized markets. Now, when it comes to lying to shareholders, for example, we already know almost the entire financial market literature or the corporate governance rules. The one single objective of the corporate governance rule is small investor protection in financial markets, right? And then Krishna referred to lying in contracts, and he talked about insurance. And we know that when the insurance company can run away without paying, to block that, we have minimum risk capital requirement of the company, right? But there's another paper that we wrote on that is based on IOUs, where the problem was that if I look at agricultural insurance, then the uptake of agricultural insurance is extremely low. And this is not only in India, this is throughout the world, but India is the only one who every year tries to have agricultural insurance with newer and newer schemes. Most countries do not. But anyway, the question then is, why is it that agricultural insurance uptake is so low without subsidies, that is, and even with subsidies, as is the case in India? And the one rationale for that is the liquidity constraint, because the premium payments for insurance have to be made at a time, especially the small farmers are most short of cash. So we work out a problem where we flip the insurance into what we call IOUs, and show that when you address this problem of this problem of liquidity, you generate a new problem, which is the trust that the insurance company or others trading with farmers must have on the farmers. That the farmers are committing to pay the thing later, to pay for pay the premium later. Just think of it as deferred payment of premium. So they're going to pay the premium later, but can those who are standing by to insure them be guaranteed that the farmers will pay the premium later? And we solve this problem by running an RCT, where we essentially use a trust mechanism, which we can talk about later. When we focus on government, remember what Krishna said, that it is essentially abuse of power that is more important in government. And I said, why? Because the government derives its ability to lie through the fact that it is the only institution in a democracy that has authority to use violence, right? And that's what power is defined to be. So, so we therefore try to control this abuse of power through institutions that Krishna already referred to, like the opposition party, the role of the opposition in democracy. We talk of courts and also rules of lawmaking. Every country, some better than others, but every country has a procedure by which ideas can become law, right? So those are the ones that control the ability of a majority parliament from making any law that they want. The other thing that is important, since we had this discussion, and so I'm not going to dwell too much into it, that lying is not illegal, because lying cannot be banned. As Krishna said, that first you will never know. It's a completely unenforceable law, and you don't want to make laws that are unenforceable. And second, that it can control opinion or judgments, right? It's very difficult to say, did the doctor get something wrong in when the doctor made a judgment call, or did the doctor deliberately get it wrong? So in principle, lying is not legal. But for governments, when they take an oath, right, anything that that you claim to do in an oath, if you don't do it, that makes it legally punishable, right? So that's the reason why we are oath taking. Lying is not legal, but lying under oath is. So that's another way we try and control the government. And focusing on institutions, I have to refer to this paper because I really love this paper. It's not written by me, it's written by a group of lawyers, but it's a fantastic paper, which says the following thing. It says that what it does is it looks at all Supreme Court judgments where the Supreme Court judge had less than a year to retire. And the government of the time had more than a year left in its term. So judges had less than a year, government at the time had more than a year. And then it looked at all the cases where the government was on one side. And then it looked at the judgments. That is to say, the judges or the bench of judges, did they find in favor of the government or not in favor of the government? And amazingly, what was found is that in situations where the Supreme Court judges had less than a year and the government had more than a year, the government won by a large, significantly large proportion. Now, this is an interesting thing. Why? Because judges in India, after retirement, can only get jobs with the government. That's the law. And therefore, the ability to be on tribunal heads, on appellate bodies, or in charge of commissions is all decided by the government. This suggests, therefore, that the Supreme Court judges who were expecting or hoping to get added employment after retirement would be finding in favor of the government. Now, is this thing relevant? Is this really true, or are we just being facetious, right? Well, interestingly, if we go back to the discussions that took place during the drafting of the Constitution, one of the issues that came up was precisely this. And many maintained that judges, remember that during independence, our life expectancy was 28. So nobody was thinking of judges living till 80 years old. So therefore, they did not have similar laws like the US, where the Supreme Court judges do not have to retire. But over in India, the discussion was that Supreme Court judges should not be allowed any employment either by the private sector or by the government. And therefore, they should be given a hefty pension. Now, I'm a great fan of Ambedkar. I love his writings, especially in economics. And but he made one mistake here. He dismissed that argument by saying that why should the government have to worry about this, or why should government jobs not be available to them after retirement? Because the government will never go to court. So he maintained that the government will not be fighting cases in court because it's a government of the people. Big mistake. Because today, if we look at the court cases, in 60% of cases, the government is on one side. And in 10% of the cases, government is on both sides. Right? So this is a real problem on how you control, I cannot call it lying, but certainly manipulation of information. So therefore, the focus with government and with CEOs, there has to be a third party. And this I'll finish very quickly. If arrangements are self-enforcing, then it takes us closer to the first best, and you don't need any third party. But when self-enforcing arrangements are not possible, then not only does it take you further away from the first best, you actually need third parties. Third parties are necessary when self-enforcement is not possible because you want somebody to enforce the rules. And that brings in costs of monitoring, so which is an added cost to society, cost of enforcing rules. Now, I want to make a point over here. Excuse me for making this point, because there was some discussion regarding the costs of lying. Now, please remember that we are not going to talk about these costs if we assume that people will lie. To give a very simple example, so when we are paying taxes, suppose the tax system is such that there is no way we can hide our incomes. So everybody reports truthfully. Because we know that if we report untruthfully, the tax inspector will catch us. So now think about it. If everybody is reporting truthfully, what exactly are the tax inspectors doing? They are a drain on our resources. They are not unearthing any misreported income. So they are not increasing the revenue of the government, but all the taxpayers are paying for their salaries. But remember that the moment you get rid of the tax inspector, because everybody is telling the truth, nobody will tell the truth. So it is important to understand that when we are talking about controlling lying, if we take into account the fact that everybody would want to lie, then the costs of monitoring and the cost of enforcing rules become very important. And that is where we talk of enabling systems. And the basic distinction between enabling and non-enabling systems is that enabling systems create guardrails. Essentially, they say what cannot be done. Whereas much of our discussion on lying, unfortunately in India especially, is on what should be done. And that's a dangerous path to go down, because that never solves the problem. If we are waiting for Gandhis in India and training people to be Gandhis, it will not be solved. But if we assume that no one is a Gandhi, then maybe we would be able to control lying. And therefore, enabling systems are important. The last point I want to make is oftentimes when we don't take this into account, when we assume that people are not going to lie, we often induce lying by the laws. And I'll give one quick example. Not only do big companies lie, the small companies lie too. It's not only the CEO and board, it's the proprietorship company also that lies. And how do they lie? Take the small players, right, who do not have to follow labor laws. So what do? If they have 50 people working for them, they will break them up into 5 or 6 companies to ensure that they are below the limit by which they are no longer small. So they'll have the same address for 6 companies running from the same place. Now that is law-induced lying. If you made the labor laws for all companies, regardless of their size, then this lying would not have happened. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Professor Keyur?
All right. I would also need, I don't have a big presentation, but I want to share some videos. So if I can get the control.
I think you have control. No? Everybody has control now.
Yeah. All
All
right.
participants, yeah.
All right. Okay, so I think this topic, in fact, I know is, I am actually, my name is Keyur Purani. I am at the Indian Institute of Management, Kozhikode, for last 15 years. And prior to that, I was in the advertising business. And I have been victim of, Professor Krishna Kumar's view on advertising since the time he was the director at IIM Kozhikode. And he would say, Keyur, you teach advertising, you talk about marketing and all that. That's a business of lies. And I was, kind of trying to wriggle out by saying that we always believe that consumers are kings, and as marketers, we only believe, consumers' viewpoint. And in fact, this is a view that, I think Professor Geetika also mentioned and Professor Jha also touched upon, is something that I strongly believe in. In fact, in mass communication also there is debate that whether the media is responsible, for, its ill effects or side effects, or is it the society? And quite often one viewpoint is taken is that essentially media is only a reflection of what society is. So, and so is advertising, according to me, because way back in 90s, when I was in advertising, we grew up on a book by John Steele on account planning, which is titled as Truth, Lies and Advertising. And of course, in that, the idea is that advertising has to be creative and simple, because the whole purpose of advertising is to win heart and minds of the consumers. And consumers, if they like simple and creative things, the marketers, perhaps, have to do that. However, and in nutshell, if you look at the whole, idea, that one point, which is in some sense, most of these points are covered, but I'm going to, focus on one point, where this is going, the business of lies and business. And to my mind, it is never going to get stopped. It is going to, expand and, sort of, going to go perhaps out of the proportion. We'll have to figure out how do we manage that. And why this is happening, again, as I said that, we believe that the consumers and people are like that. So the larger point is, why this is, flourishing and it is going to grow, is primarily because we love lies, as human beings. If truth is bitter, lies are sweeter. And, most of the people actually, love lying. They want to spread lies primarily because they want to control, the reality. So they would try to manipulate if the reality is not their way, and try to figure out what perhaps could be a more controlling situation for themselves. And hence, by and large, we would find that, people would continue doing this because that gives them a sense of control. Now, the question is that why, the receivers of the information have to suffer, and, what do they try to do? What is their coping mechanism? Now, most of the lying which is spreading and is listened to and believed in by the receiver, by and large, is primarily because the information is not verifiable. And since the information is not verifiable, either the information is not available, and in today's time information is too much, it is not verifiable. And since it is not verifiable, receivers or the audiences try to find a shortcut, and the shortcut is that they rely on the source of the information. And hence, like Professor Jha was saying, that the source, becomes an important role in judging an information, whether it is a lie or a truth. The biggest problem with advertising today is that the source is identifiable as sponsor of the information. And Professor Jha mentioned about advertising versus publicity or public relations. Advertising is a sponsored communication, as we know, because you buy a commercial time spot and then try to do pre-tested advertising on that particular time slot, which essentially means that the advertiser or the business is in full control of the information. And since consumers perceive that the source is sort of self-aggrandizing or self-promoting, they try to sort of have a problem. And from the point of view of spreading lies also, that becomes an important phenomenon. Now, how do you really prevent companies to spread lies? So you have regulation, and I think the legal issues have been talked about just now. Regulatory agencies are in place for advertising, as well as variety of other businesses, where you try to control the source. Now, so if you look at the traditional environment in which advertising worked, obviously, later became incredible or, uncredible, primarily because, marketers went overboard and perhaps, were trying to, sort of quote unquote lie about the factual information about the products and services. And then, people believed that the regulation perhaps would control. In fact, earlier times, recently I was reading an article and somebody said that, this whole idea of there is something called truth is actually a phenomenon of, older generations. If you're a baby boomer, perhaps you would believe that there is one truth. Today's generation don't believe that there is something called truth. What we are trying to say is that since this control was considered to be an important thing, where the marketers and the advertisers were going overboard, you had regulatory agencies trying to come out. In fact, there was control, as I was telling you. The olden times there were a lot of controls. That's why this whole baby boomer thing came into picture. So if you look at previous generation, there was control because there was technological barriers for anybody to get into mass communication or spreading lies, so to say. There were regulatory barriers and license era, etc., etc. So there were control mechanisms which in fact believe to curb the lies or contain the lies. But did it work when you had more democratic technologies and sort of social media came into picture? And the answer perhaps is no. And I want to show you two videos here. Just take a look at the first video. And the question is, which one is real?
For over 125 years, we've been bringing people together. Today, we'd like to come together on something that concerns all of us: obesity. The long-term health of our families and the country are at stake. And as the nation's leading beverage company, we have played an important role. Across our portfolio of over 650 beverages, we now offer 180 low and no calorie choices. These diet beverages still pose serious health risks. Even though we've reduced the calories per serving, these beverages can still cause kidney problems, obesity, metabolic syndrome, cell damage, and rotting teeth, which leaves 470 beverages which have extremely high, unhealthy levels of calories. Consuming large amounts of rapidly digested sugar and high fructose corn syrup causes a spike in blood sugar and insulin, which can lead to inflammation and insulin resistance, both of which may increase your risk of stroke, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and cancer. Coke has also been known to accelerate aging and cause high cholesterol. The American Heart Association recommends consuming no more than 450 calories from sugar-sweetened beverages per week, the amount in about 3 cans of soda. Imagine if cigarette companies said they were doing something responsible to protect you. How would you react to that? Beating obesity will take action by all of us, based on one simple, common sense fact. All calories are not the same, and the calories in Coca-Cola products have no nutritional value. If you choose to live a healthy lifestyle, then you should not be drinking any of our products. If you drink Coke, you'll get fatter and fatter. The solution is simple, and it's right in front of your eyes. Don't drink Coke. It's killing you and your family. Coca-Cola, we're partially responsible for America's obesity problem.
What an honest ad, and I don't know whether you have come across this, but this is something that has created some kind of buzz in the social media and YouTube. Coca-Cola coming out with such an honest ad, and this is tagged as honest ad in social media. Now take a look at another video.
For over 125 years, we've been bringing people together. Today, we'd like people to come together on something that concerns all of us: obesity. The long-term health of our families and the country is at stake. And as the nation's leading beverage company, we can play an important role. Across our portfolio of more than 650 beverages, we now offer over 180 low and no calorie choices. And most of our full calorie beverages now have low or no calorie versions. Over the last 15 years, this has helped reduce the average calories per serving across our industry's products in the US by about 22%. We've created smaller portion-controlled sizes for our most popular drinks, and we'll have them in about 90% of the country by the end of this year. We've added the calorie content of all our beverages on the front to help make it even easier for people to make informed decisions. For elementary, middle, and high schools, our industry has voluntarily changed its offerings to primarily waters, juices, and low and no calorie options. This has helped to reduce the calories from our industry's beverages in those schools by 90% since 2004. We support programs like the Boys and Girls Club of America that enable young people to get active and start healthy habits early. Leading is also about new thinking, which is why we will continue to work with scientists and nutritionists on innovative things like zero-calorie, all-natural sweeteners. But beating obesity will take action by all of us, based on one simple common-sense fact: all calories count, no matter where they come from, including Coca-Cola and everything else with calories. And if you eat and drink more calories than you burn off, you'll gain weight. The well-being of our families and communities concerns everyone, and finding a solution will take continued effort from all of us. But at Coca-Cola, we know when people come together, we can make a real difference. To learn more, visit coke.com/comingtogether.
So as you can see, you have two videos out there on a channel, YouTube, which is an open channel, as we know. And people have access to both this video. The question is, which video is the original ad? And obviously we know that the Coca-Cola would not advocate, saying that don't drink Coke. The second ad perhaps, or in fact, indeed, is the real ad that we're talking about. Now, what is lie? Professor Krishna Kumar would differ, that still is lie. But the interesting part here is that what the brands are trying to communicate today are getting hijacked. Now, interesting part, is still not over in the story. And I was just trying to look at, the number of views of each of these video. And what I found was quite shocking and, alarming. The original ad, put, by the brand had only 30,000 views when I last checked. And the honest ad, quote unquote, which is a dubbed ad created by a user, is having 8 million views. The point that I'm trying to make is that, we believed, and the marketers in the world over everywhere, believed that word of mouth is more credible. We also believe that democratic, Professor Krishna Kumar began by saying that, what will happen to democracy if we talk about today is an era of democracy. there are no barriers. In fact, everything is free, not censored, in the market. And we don't know what is, right or wrong. In fact, has this, spreading of lies stopped when the democratic era through social technologies has come? The answer is no. In fact, it has augmented, it has, expanded with large number of, information which is fake information. The biggest problem today with the social media, as we all know, is the fake news. And we thought that there were few companies who were perhaps corrupt, having licenses, were controlling information, and hence that was a bad era. When you have democratic area, we rely on not regulation, we relied on what is called revolution, perhaps to control and contain lies, but that is not happening. If you look at what is also happening, is today's technologies are creating. So from sponsored source, we went to open source in today's time. It is not now. What is happening is that you are actually trying to create fake source. Just take a look at this, and I'm sure you are aware of the deep fake technology that is now going to come into.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, I don't know, Killmonger was right, or Ben Carson is in the sunken place, or how about this? Simply, President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now, you see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. It's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources. It may sound basic, but how we move forward in the age of information is going to be the difference between whether we survive or whether we become some kind of fucked up dystopia. Thank you. Stay woke, bitches.
No, sorry about the bad words here, but this is a lie, as we know. You have deep fake technology today, which is creating evidences which are hard to refuse. The videos, the source is completely masked, to resemble, very close to the real another person. And, this whole business of lies and, fakeness is actually augmenting. The question still remains as to how do we contain it. We relied on regulation, it did not work. We moved to revolution, where we believe that democracy, perhaps, in the media and information exchange, would solve this problem. It has not helped. What perhaps can help is the only thing which I believe is self-regulation. And in advertising, going back to advertising, advertising always believed that there is, a thin line between exaggeration. Exaggeration is a language of advertising, as Professor Jha, said, and the consumers love that, and you require to kind of get into their mind and heart, so there's no option. But there's a thin line between lying, innocent line and harmful line, the intent that perhaps you would have, and that requires to be understood. No third party, no second party perhaps can address this. It is only individual themselves perhaps can address this particular problem. So I think, what in summary, what we are saying is that we have seen, variety of, changes in the society, and this whole phenomenon of lying, and this is actually growing, and the technology perhaps is helping it grow. And since there's an innate requirement and sort of love for lying among the human beings, this perhaps will continue growing. The only thing is that, the sources have to be more informed, they have to be more, sort of self-regulated. Thank you very much.
Very good, Keyur.
Professor, should I?
Yes, Sabir.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And it was great to hear the views of so many people and very well articulated. I think I am the only entrepreneur here in the panel. So my views are probably different from different in perspective from the views of the rest of the panelists who represent the academia. I'd be very happy to get your feedback also. I'm a mechanical engineer from MNIT, 85. So Professor Geetika Goyal, you'd be happy to know that. Then I did 2 years at IIM Lucknow, 87. Then I worked for 3 years. And then I have spent about 27 years building a business, which is Eagle. The website is eagle.in. And today we offer hardware maintenance for IT assets across India. And we service in about 500 locations and employ close to 200 engineers. And we are trying to build this to an even greater extent to make it go into each of the 700 districts of India, the deepest corners, so that it becomes a platform that any company who wants support for their assets across the company to the deepest, where there are law and order problems, jungle, snow, Naxalite problems, etc. Anywhere you have an IT infrastructure, we can sustain it and maintain it for you. That's what we are trying to do. We are almost there. We are in 500 out of the 700 locations. Going forward, as an entrepreneur, I would like to say that the least costly strategy is to be honest. So I don't want to frame this in terms of necessarily in terms of whether truth or lies. I'm simply saying that it's smart to be truthful. It's easiest to be truthful. Now, having said that, let me go a little further. I want to quote 2 lines from this poem by Rudyard Kipling, The Ballad of East and West. It goes like this. Oh, East is East and West is West, and never the twain shall meet. I'm going to reword this for our context. Like this. Oh, truth is truth and lies are lies, and never the twain shall meet. I'll repeat. Oh, truth is truth and lies are lies, and never the twain shall meet. These words highlight the perception that truth is white, absolute white, and lies are black, absolute black, and they never meet. But in reality, there is a very big ground between white and black. And there are many shades of gray. And each one of those shades is also the truth, because there is an element of white there. So when you are in business, there are very many variables, so many that you do not even know all of them. And most certainly, you cannot control except a few, which are like the 4 P's you can control, because that's what you are doing. But beyond that, there is the whole environment, the business environment or the marketing environment, as we call it, where you work And there are hundreds and thousands of parameters which you cannot control and you're not even aware of. So it is very easy for your truth to become lies. So what you're thinking today, and you come up with your plans and strategies and your plans for investors or for your bank or for your customers, once you roll them out, you figured out that by the time you actually brought them out, the ground under you has changed and shifted. So much as you may want or not want, your truth has changed. So as an entrepreneur, I would like to say that your intent must be honest. It has to be honest. You don't have any other choice. Because otherwise, sooner than later, somebody, if not everybody, will find out who you are and what you are. And that's the end. So if you want to set up a small business, or if you want to be known as a fly-by-night, it's fine, do it. But if you do want to grow and you want to make a big business and you want to be respected, then you have no option but to be honest. So as I was trying to say, there is no absolute truth. And I saw many people, many presenters, even during the discussion today, pointing this out. You look at Article 377 that has got scrapped. So what was lies 2 years ago is truth today. What do you do about that? I've just taken an example which doesn't concern business possibly, just to make a point. So you go to an investor for money, and he says, what are you going to do in 3 years? You say, I'll do 5x. Now, those are based on certain assumptions, which in all likelihood are going to change. So in 3 years, your truth might have changed again. Right? So the simple point that I want to make is that we should not be too taken up by this question of truth and lies, because fundamentally there is nothing which is truly true and truly lies. The answer is in between. The intent has to be good. Are you trying to fool somebody? That's wrong. Are you willfully trying to fool somebody? That's definitely wrong. Look at the tremendous amount of progress that has happened in the last 20 years. I remember in 94, 95, when I was a young sales guy, I was into business then. I remember feeling so happy that I did not have to go to the customer anymore to deliver a quotation, because I could send it by fax. This is 94 I'm talking about. It's just a little more than 25 years. It's within our lifetime. And fax, who uses a fax today? It came in 94 and vanished in 98 and 99. So a change which was so dramatic and which made us feel that the world had changed in a sense for us, vanished in 4 years, 5 years. And then email, the whole mobile, the whole app store, the way it has changed, Uber, Airbnb, you look at it, it's changed, dramatically changed. And all that has happened to a very large extent because of the spirit of entrepreneurs who have been willing to take that risk and say, okay, Mr. Entrepreneur, you're asking me how much I'll be in 3 years, I'll be 5x. But I may well not be. I'm willing to take that call and then see how it goes. If I lose, fine. I would like to say that we have to distinguish between lies and creativity. You know, somebody makes a film on a novel. Does he really follow the script of the original author exactly? He does not. There's something called creative license. And he says, I could not depict it exactly. I tried my best. I only had 2 hours, and this is what comes out. Right? So somewhere I think we should not be that suspicious about advertisement or overstating things. You know, at IIM Lucknow, there was this wonderful concept we came across in one of the case studies, which stuck on in my mind, and I've used it very effectively all my life, and that was the Pygmalion effect. I don't remember in which class that was taught to us, the Pygmalion effect. You know, so it is creating a power of expectation among your employees. And because of that, they perform better just because you have a higher level of expectation. So if somebody you know is capable of doing X, you create that pull of expectation and say, hey, look, you're capable of doing 2X. Now, somewhere there is an element of deception there. There is. But I have tested it personally and seen that it works. That person may very well come up to 2X. If not 2X, at least 1.8X, maybe 1.5. But it does make it happen. You manage to pull that person from 1 to 1.5 or 1.8, maybe 2. So there is a lot of, so as long as your intent is good and you're trying to create and you're working for progress, I think we must look at this question more benignly and less judgmentally. That's actually all that I wanted to say.
Very good. Very good. It's already it's the normal way we speak. It's already 1:30. And if there are no other questions, then we wind up the session. And since we don't have viewers here who can ask questions, we have consciously kept them away, because at times they start disturbing in the discussion presentation itself. So if anybody has any question, you can definitely send an email and give feedback whether these kind of discussions need to go. It's very interesting. There were 5 speakers, and they have spoken so many different things. It is not confusing more. It is clarifying more. For example, nobody said that intent should not be correct. And if that is the case, there is a common ground. And we have to just see, then there came self-control. What are methods of self-control? How do we develop that? If that is possible, you don't need policing all the time. Because one important thing that we had to do at the time of independence, if we wanted to have whatever we wanted in Constitution, we had to start from the beginning character on that. The rest of the things would have been happening, developing on their own in the direction that you wanted, because people would have known that you cannot do away with technology. If education is important, is it important? We may have chalk and blackboard. We may have IT and Zoom. But education remains. And that is what I find, though when myself and Dr. Geetika were just discussing, it came as a casual remark. But to me, it looks a lot of lessons are emerging. On one hand, not doing something to control every action of everybody, that is not democracy. And at the same time, ensuring that everything goes in the larger benefit of the society. That's the other extreme. And it's a big challenge. We have not thought over these issues. Maybe in the years to come, we'll know how to develop this character that the self-control is there through intent. If that is the case, then I'm quite sure that things will move. What Subir says, what Keyur says, what Professor Mithilesh says, all are talking the same thing. The only thing is there something which we should have done and inadvertently we have not done? If so, there is never too late. Our generation might not have been able to develop that answer, but we cannot lose hope of the next generation to be able to. Thank you all. It was just a question of raking the issue so that we know that there's a spectrum, neither truth, absolute truth, nor absolute lies.
By the way, it is a very Maoist statement. Mao was the first one who said that there is no absolute truth.
And so that's very
interesting. Be careful, we may be termed as Maoists.
Yes, and that's where Professor Gangotpadhyay is very interesting. Where to draw the line? Who has to draw the line? How the line has to be drawn? Believe me, Professor Gangotpadhyay, it came, the whole idea of where to draw the line came when I was in hospital bed in ICU, having undergone an operation, where the thin line of demarcation between business greed and need. How to draw, how to take note of it. Now we are just going to pass that line, and we must stop. And that should occur to us at that point of time. Because once you cross, it's a different thing, then you are on the other side. And this, I was surprised. It took me whole of my career and a knee joint operation to realize this point. There's a thin line of demarcation.
But I am almost at the point of realizing that, because lunch is downstairs at 1, now it is crossing 1:30.
Yes.
I would have crossed the line if I don't go down right now.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was wonderful listening to all of you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll share the recording of it through
yes,
email.
Please.
And लाडा हम लोगों को होस्ट बना दो फिर से।
अच्छा, वो आपका नाम, मेरा नाम क्या सामने मोर रीनेम करूं क्या?
वो जो मी
नहीं
मी
मोर में दबाइए।
कृष्ण कुमार का मोर क्या?
नहीं अपना कृष्णा लाडा का मोर।
Do you want to change another degree? Yes, I'm done. Sometimes without instruction.
Very good. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.